There are four basic washes that are used in watercolor. The first is the dry flat wash. The second is the wet flat wash, and that's where you're painting wet into wet. So here, I'll again draw a rectangle. This shape simply because it's easy. And start off by applying water just as you would with a dry flat wash. You build up a bead on the paper of clear water, and you go ahead and bring that down. It doesn't have to be clear. If you're doing a painting, you can always add a little bit of color in there. But for the purposes of the exercise and developing the skill, we'll just use clear water. Lower that down, bring it on down, wetting the paper as you go. The wet watercolor wash is where you're starting to get interesting, because it adds variation that you don't get in a dry wash. But again, you're attempting to get it as perfect as possible just for developing the skill. And that's something that you practice. It's just as though a musician practices their notes. You aren't going to go out and get a beautiful painting right off the bat. It takes practicing, just like a musician practices. So there we've got the paper wet. And you pick up the excess down at the bottom, just like you would with a dry wash. Dabbing your brush off on a piece of paper towel. Always keep a piece of paper towel handy. And what I've done is I've gone ahead and mixed up the ultramarine blue previously, just to save time. I'm using ultramarine blue partly because I love the color, but also it has a wonderful texture. When you're applying color, always be sure to mix up the color in the well. And here you just kind of dump it on and let the watercolor do the work. Let it flow. And just keep adding it, bring it on down. Here you're not worrying so much about a bead, making it perfect. You just dump the color on there, let it do its thing. And one thing you'll find is that each pigment has its own characteristics. Some flow faster, some flow slower. Some have texture. One of the nice things about the ultramarine blue is the texture. And you'll see it start to develop as the color dries a bit. What's happening is that the pigment settles in a very natural way on the paper. And we get down to the bottom, again, pick up that excess liquid. And you can see it's spread out pretty nicely. It adds some variation that you don't get with the dry washes. And I'll give it a little bit just to see how the texture settles. I see I've got, it looks like a little bit of lint in here. There might be a cat hair. I love cats. But you can't go back in there because it'll mess up the wash. You don't go back for anything. There are times where you do want the effects that are created by going back in. See here, you can neaten up the line a little bit at the bottom if you want. See how that texture is developing? It's better when you have something like that in your pigment, in your painting, to wait until it's dry. And chances are you can lift it up once it's dry without any mark in there. That one will probably leave a little bit of a darker mark, but it won't be noticeable because of the texture. It'll probably blend in just fine. And you can see the texture developing here. these textures are very useful in creating a natural look. Like this could be useful when you're painting something that's a material. It can be useful painting water where you're getting some variation in there. And just in general, it creates a very natural look that's much more appealing than, say, for example, brush marks. Anyway, I'll see if I can get a close-up on that. That'll probably work. Anyway, thanks for watching.